And it's time for Brunch with Bernie. Delayed by a couple hours. Maybe it's now dinner with Bernie. But Senator Sanders, welcome.
Good to be with you, Tom.
Great to have you with us. I know that there's a lot on your table or on your plate right now. A lot going on in the Senate and around the country.
There is. Let me start off with an issue that people may not think is too sexy, but is enormously important. And that is trade, and that is the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is now being debated in the Senate. Tom, one of the reasons why the middle class in this country has been disappearing for 40 years and why we have 45 million Americans living in poverty and why many of the new jobs that are being created are low-wage and part-time work and why we are seeing a massive shift of wealth from the middle class to the top 1/10 of 1%. A lot of that has to do with trade. And by that I mean trade agreements like NAFTA, CAFTA, permanent normal trade relations with China, and other trade agreements, which have essentially said to corporate America, okay, you can shut down plants, manufacturing facilities in America. And by the way, incredibly, we have lost since 2001 some 60,000 factories in America and millions of good-paying jobs. And I think one of the reasons for that is this disastrous trade approach, which says to these companies, you can shut down these plants, you can move to China, you can move to Mexico, you can hire workers at very, very low wages, and you bring your products back into America. And while it's not the only reason as to why the middle class is disappearing, it is certainly a major reason. So when you look at this Trans-Pacific Partnership, one of the reasons why I am strongly opposed to it and will do everything that I can to slow it down. I don't think we can defeat it in the Senate. I think the fight is going to be in the House, but I'll do everything I can against it, is because of the impact that it's had on American workers. And interestingly enough, I know the president has been running around the country and talking about it, and now he supports it, and I think he's dead wrong on this. But you should know who is for it and who is against it. And it's the same old cast of characters. The people who really want this agreement are virtually every major multinational corporation, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and all the big business organizations. It is the pharmaceutical companies who stand to substantially increase their global profits. It is Wall Street, who will also make a lot more money through the TPP. Those are the people who are for it. And you can learn something by that reality, who is for it. The other reality is who is against it. And the folks who are against it is every union in this country, representing many millions of workers who do understand that these trade policies have been a disaster for the middle class and that we can't continue down the same line. You have virtually every major environmental group in the country, including the League of Conservation Voters, the Sierra Club, the Natural Resources Defense Council, 350.org, and others who understand that this TPP will be bad for the environment. And you have major religious groups like the Presbyterian Church USA and the United Methodist Church, among many others, who oppose this legislation because of what it does to the poorest people on earth. There is another provision in it which needs some discussion. It doesn't get a whole lot of attention. And that is what is called the investor-state dispute settlement system. Have you talked about that much, Tom?
I did. Yesterday, actually, I went through a list of 10 ISDS where the United States has been hurt by these various lawsuits. Good. The funeral company, you know the list.
But it's more here's what it is, and people have got to appreciate this because this is really heavy-duty stuff.
Yeah.
This is what the investor-state dispute settlement, ISDS provision, is about. And probably it's best to give you some examples internationally. You have a situation where in Uruguay, the small country of Uruguay, the president of that country was an oncologist, guy who was very concerned about cancer. He led the effort in that country to do everything that they could to prevent their young people from smoking cigarettes. Similar activity took place in Australia. Under the same type of language in previous trade agreements, Philip Morris, one of the large tobacco companies in the world, is suing Uruguay and Australia for the crime of trying to prevent their young people from getting hooked on cigarettes and dying of cancer. And the argument is, which is part of what this legislation is about, is that doing that, protecting the kids of those countries, will reduce expected future profits. In other words, the goal of this legislation, and this really tells you everything you need to know, is designed to maximize corporate profits. And if countries are trying to protect their kids from tobacco, obviously, you're going to cut sales and hurt profits. And therefore, those companies can go to an international tribunal and say, look, Uruguay is doing terrible things to me. We're losing money. And then the criteria that the tribunal has to deliberate on is, what about expected future profits? That is so crazy that it is beyond belief. I mean, it is undermining democracy and undermining the ability of governments to protect the health and the environment of their people. But it's not just tobacco. You have a company called Vattenfall, which is a Swedish energy company, has used this process to sue Germany for $5 billion. Now, why was Germany sued for $5 billion? Because they made a decision to phase out nuclear power. Now, I think that's a good decision. Other people may disagree. But one might think that the people of Germany and their elected officials had the right to decide their energy future and not some large corporation who was worried about lost future profits. Third example, you have a French waste management firm suing Egypt, very poor country. Why are they suing Egypt? Because Egypt raised its minimum wage and improved its labor laws. And that will be detrimental to the profits of this company called Veolia. So, I mean, if you step back and you say, this is so crazy, this is a deliberate effort to undermine democratic governance in the sense that if a government sits here and says in Vermont or in Egypt or any place, this is what we think we need to do to represent the best interests of our people, that government could be sued by a large multinational corporation because that government has developed policies which hurt future profits.
It's remarkable.
It is. It's completely undermining democracy. What we expect from our government is to do the right thing by the people. And this provision, Invest the State Dispute Resolution, is about protecting corporate profits. And the last point that I would make, of many, is that, in the United States, we pay the highest prices in the world because of the power for our prescription drugs, because of the power of the pharmaceutical industry. What is in this agreement also is language which will make it harder for developing countries around the world to move toward generics and lower-priced prescription drugs, which will mean that poor people around the world will certainly die or become much sicker because they can't afford to pay the outrageously high prices that the drug companies want. So, I mean, those are just 4 reasons, and there are a lot more as to why I'm working hard to defeat this fast-track provision and TPP in its entirety.
Yeah. And yesterday we had 13 Democrats vote to move this forward. Do you expect that trend to continue?
Yes. You have, I think, 46 Democrats, including myself and Angus King, who are independents, in the caucus, and I think you have 12 or 13 who believe in this stuff, and they will work with the Republicans and get it passed. I think we have a better shot in the House.
Yeah. This is where the Obama trade meme is useful. The right-wing websites are starting to refer to it as Obama trade, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on Republicans. Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. We'll be right back. And Senator, the website is obamatrade.com for your right-wing friends. We'll be right back with Senator Sanders. Brunch with Bernie, your calls up next.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's Brunch with Bernie. Check out Senator Sanders' website, sanders.senate.gov. And welcome back. Jim in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, watching Free Speech TV. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, Senator Sanders. I'm a donator, regular donator to your campaign. I really believe in you. One question I had for you was, the way Obama is for this trade program, is he really trying to not, support the next Democratic presidential candidate? I mean, if he starts going against this thing, wouldn't the funds dry up for the Democratic Party in general?
Well, I think, I am disturbed, although not surprised. I mean, Obama has been, made it clear for many years that he supports this. So what I'm seeing now, what you're seeing, is nothing new. But it is disturbing. And it is disturbing to me, not only in terms of what it will mean in future politics or elections, but that he is opposing very strongly the people who put him in his position. When you're a president, you're a senator, there will be times when you disagree with your base. That happens. But generally speaking, one should be very, what's the word here? One should respect the people who elected you on certain principles. And here you have the trade union movement and millions of people who work really hard to elect him who are saying, Mr. President, this agreement is a disaster, don't go forward. You have environmental groups who are very supportive of him saying, don't go forward. Religious groups saying the same thing. So I can't, and needless to say, the vast majority of the people in the Democratic caucus, there are 12 or 13 out of 46 who support this, but the rest strongly oppose him in the Senate and even more, higher percentage in the House. So the question has to be asked is, why is the president turning against all of those folks who helped put him in his office? And I think that's a political mistake, but more importantly, I think it's a public policy mistake. TPP is a bad idea.
Yeah. We have how much time till the break? Minute and 20 seconds. We'll get a quick call in here. James in Silverton, Oregon. Very quick one for Bernie.
Yes, Bernie. I'm on SSDI, and I've been disabled since I was 19, and what they're going to cut for the SSDI 19%. I only get $466 a month after the Part B deduction out of my check.
All right, James, listen, it's right to be very, very nervous. What the Republicans want to do is either cut SSDI or else force us to cut retirement benefits for the elderly on Social Security, and we're going to fight them back. I am not convinced that we're going to lose this fight. I think the American people understand that millions of folks like you are struggling on SSDI. We have elderly people trying to live on $13,000, $14,000 Social Security benefits. We are going to rally the American people and tell the Republicans they're just not going to get away with this. And, we're going to work very, very hard on this.
Yeah, this is, I get so many people calling who are concerned about this, that the Republicans set this thing up.
Let's work together to make sure it doesn't happen.
There you go. Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie Hour, our national town hall meeting here on the Thom Hartmann Program. We'll be back with more of your calls for the Senator right after this. 20 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. It's Brunch with Bernie. We're live. It's the third hour of our program. And Khalil in Camden, South Carolina. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, Senator. How are you?
Good.
Good. Okay. I'm a native of North Philadelphia, and as many people have seen on the video, it's a crisscross of old factories. There's a lot of rail lines, like more than most people would understand unless you're from the area. All right, so there are literally thousands of short train trestles, and you can see right to the tracks. All right, right down to the tracks. I mean, these things were built in the 30s. Because I mean, when I would take the train to work, you look at the cornerstone, and it says 1932, 1934, 1936. Mm-hmm. All right, so these things are crumbling. You can see the stalactites, the minerals dripping down.
So your question, Khalil?
My question is that why is it the legislators are not making the connection between the government being able to borrow at 0% until the Fed goes up, which they say is probably this summer, all right, borrowing money at 0%, to fix these? I mean, that is a no-brainer. If someone said you can get a car right now for 0% so that you can get to your job that's 25 miles away and there's no public transportation, that's a no-brainer.
Thanks.
You're
Thanks,
right.
Khalil.
It is a no-brainer, and you're absolutely right. And let me tell you what I believe we should do, and I'll tell you where, and I can't explain it, but I will tell you where the Republicans are coming from. What Khalil is saying is that in terms of rail, and we're maybe focusing on this because of this terrible accident that happened near Philadelphia, which killed, 7 people, Tom?
Yeah, it's up to 8 now.
So 8 people. Real tragedy. Our infrastructure, that's our roads, our bridges, water systems, wastewater plants, and rail, are in very, very bad shape. There's no one who argues that. The American Society of Civil Engineers, the guys who study these things, say we need over $3 trillion of investment to bring our infrastructure up to par. And I agree with them. That's why a couple of months ago I introduced legislation that would invest $1 trillion in rebuilding our infrastructure. And Khalil, not only will that improve our rail system and our roads and our bridges, it will create up to 13 million decent-paying jobs. So when we improve that rail bed that you're talking about in North Philadelphia, you're also not only creating a safer situation, a more productive economy because trains are going to go faster, you're also creating jobs that we desperately need. So of course we should do that. Now the problem is, and the point that Khalil makes, which is an excellent point, is that interest rates now are very, very low. This is exactly the time that you should be borrowing money and investing in improving infrastructure and education in America. On the other hand, what I have to tell you is that my Republican colleagues, basically for many of them, they don't believe in the concept of government. They do not want to ask the wealthy to pay anything more in taxes. And they are making it almost impossible for us to raise the money that we need to rebuild infrastructure, including the Highway Trust Fund, which is about to run out of money in a couple of months. So we've got a real problem there, but I think Khalil is exactly right.
Phil in Skokie, Illinois, listening on WCPT. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hello, Senator, and you too, Tom. My question is when are you going to open up a Chicago office? Because I want to go to work for you to help get you elected as our next president.
Phil, thanks a million, and we will. Right now, 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was not sure that I was going to undertake this adventure and run for president. So we have got to now start putting together our organization and our campaign team and our offices, and we're starting out in Iowa and New Hampshire, but we will certainly be in Illinois, and we will have staff there and an office, and you'll know about it. We'll get the word to you, and we thank you very much for your willingness to help out.
Kevin in Santa Fe, New Mexico. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Good afternoon, Senator Sanders and Tom. Good to speak with you. I was on hold since anything goes, and I think what I was going to say will apply to you. Would like to see if you could work it into your campaign platform about how raising the minimum wage, which I know you're for, would positively affect the Social Security.
Right.
And furthermore, I would like to know your thoughts on, as disastrous as they say all of these previous trade agreements are, why do I never hear talk of repealing NAFTA?
Good. Okay. All right, let me start off with Social Security and the point that Kevin makes. And I'll be honest with you, Tom, 6 months ago I hadn't even thought about this. But one of the reasons that Social Security today is solvent and can pay out 100% of all benefits for the next 18 years, only 18 years. So, and I emphasize that because there are a lot of folks out there telling you Social Security is going broke. It is not. $2.6 trillion in the trust fund can pay out all benefits for 18 years, but we want it longer than that. And one of the reasons it is not longer than that, and I think this is the point that Kevin is making, is because wages have been so depressed. We have people who are earning less than they used to, or in fact have not seen a real inflation-adjusted for wage increase in years. That means that Social Security Trust Fund is getting less money than one had anticipated. So if you were making $40,000 a year and over a 5-year period you went up to $50,000, that means you're putting more money into the Social Security Trust Fund. On the other side of the equation is right now the cap is at about $118,000, and you have a lot of people who have gone over the cap. So if you're making $180,000 right now, you're not paying anything more into Social Security Trust Fund than you would if you were making $118,000. Bottom line is there is less taxable income going into the Social Security Trust Fund than one had previously expected because of the growing income inequality in America. And Kevin's point is quite right. In terms of repealing legislation, we gave very serious thought not to repealing PNTR with China, but going back to, and I will, going back to the situation where they have to get approval every single year.
Cool. Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our national town hall meeting, Brunch with Bernie. We'll be right back with your calls. 28 minutes before the hour. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour in the third hour of our show today. We are live with Senator Sanders taking your calls. And Lynn in Portland, Oregon, listening on X-Ray Radio. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi. Thank you so much for taking my call. Senator Sanders, recently I was on a flight to New York and sat next to a physicist from Tufts University who was attending a international conference on nuclear non-proliferation. And he gave me a lot of really interesting facts and insight on the subject. One being that the Pentagon or the government is going to be appropriating billions of dollars this year to upgrade our nuclear weaponry in this country, which the professor said is disastrous, unnecessary, and crazy. So I was just wondering what your feelings were on the this industrial military complex in this country and what you think about the appropriated funds.
You know, Lynn, I would tell you one of the miracles, if you believe in miracles, I'll tell you one of them. I think, as everybody knows, the United States exploded 2 nuclear weapons in Japan in 1945. And I think the people who were living at that point, including many in the scientific community, were of the opinion that that type of use of nuclear weapons in war would, continue. The fact that it has not happened for so many years, to me, is unbelievable. I think people back then would not have believed that to be possible. But I think we are, we are extraordinarily lucky that there has not been another war with nuclear weapons, and I think we have got to do everything that we can to end the proliferation of nuclear weapons and to reduce the number of nuclear weapons that are sitting in the United States and around the world, because the day will come when something awful can happen. So count me in as somebody who believes that we have got to very significantly reduce the amount of nuclear weapons. We have weapons here that can kill people a zillion times over. It makes no sense at all.
Bill in Clifton, New Jersey. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yeah, hi. Senator Sanders, I was wondering if you would consider doing video town halls in all 50 states for campaigning and giving the Electoral College one less reason to be there.
Well, I don't know about the Electoral College, but we will use video. We have a very strong, we are working right now and already have a pretty strong social media network. We're working with folks at a group called Revolution who did a lot of Obama's social media, and they're doing a good job for us. And the idea of doing town meetings with teleconferencing is something that appeals to me very, very much. So in terms of the campaign, I suspect the day will come probably sooner than later when I will be speaking to people in 50 states around the country simultaneously.
Marie in Carbondale, Colorado. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Thank you, gentlemen. A few weeks ago, President Obama spoke with Chris Matthews, and he was touting the TPP and talking about the future of the United States was to be a service industry nation and people who are working on technological advancement. And then he said, if you're waiting for the manufacturing base, this is a paraphrase, but if you're waiting for manufacturing to come back, that ship has sailed. And I thought that's a fine thing to say if you're an A student and know that you're going to get a wonderful education and go on to great paying jobs. But what if you're a C student? What if you've struggled academically? As an educator, I was not only appalled but infuriated. We've already used the military as a way of a job program for C students or for kids who've struggled. I would like to hear what a Sanders administration would do for people who deserve a living wage and a good life.
Well, Marie, thank you. That is a very important question that you're asking. As I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons why the middle class in this country has been disappearing for 40 years and why people are working longer hours for low wages has to do with the loss of millions of good-paying manufacturing jobs. Today, the percentage of manufacturing jobs is substantially less than it used to be. Now, to some degree, that has to do with robotics. You need fewer people to produce stuff, but a lot of it has to do with disastrous trade policy. So, point number one, Marie, I believe in a trade policy which helps us grow manufacturing jobs here in the United States of America and not just in China. Number two, I think that when we raise the minimum wage to a living wage, you're going to find people able to live with a lot more dignity than is currently the case right now, trying to get by on $7.25 or $8 or $9 an hour. So the goal here, and what we will certainly focus on, is to figure out how we rebuild our manufacturing base, how we create jobs that pay people a decent wage, how we rebuild the trade union movement so that workers can sit down and negotiate collectively with their employers. There's another idea which we are trying to just advance and work out all the details, is I very much believe in the idea of worker ownership of places in which people are employed. And we do reasonably well here in the state of Vermont. I think Ohio and Vermont are leading the nation. But what we want are policies which say to an employer, if you want to sell your company, why don't you think about selling them to the workers themselves? And here are some tax benefits if you want to move in that direction. Furthermore, Marie, I think we have got to understand, as you just indicated, not everybody is able to go to college, is a good student, or everybody wants to go to college, and that's not the end of the world. There are a whole lot of people, millions and millions of people who are able to make it into the middle class by working in manufacturing. If you had a union, you paid pretty good wages. And the transformation of the American economy is that General Motors 30 years ago was the largest employer in this country. It has good wages, benefits, and strong unions, and today it is Walmart. Poor wages, poor benefits, anti-union. So what we also have to do is develop training programs for young people to work not only in manufacturing, but to become plumbers and carpenters and do all the kinds of good work that we need and have them earn a decent wage. So bottom line is we have got to focus on creating decent-paying jobs in America. If we purchase products, everything being equal, we should try to manufacture those products in America. If the president said that he thinks there is not much of a future in manufacturing, I strongly disagree with him. Our job is to figure out how we rebuild that base, which is so important to our economy.
Dan in Marble, Colorado. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Right down the road from Carbondale and the source of the marble for the Tomb of the Unknowns, a Lincoln Memorial, and all kinds of stuff like that. One, thanks for taking my call. First, Mr. Sanders, as a 54-year-old registered independent, I am re-registering as a Democrat to support you in the primaries. And my question is, in light of that one video of the Tea Party guy in Georgia said he'd support Hillary, and the constitutional sheriff that was on your show yesterday saying that he would vote for Bernie over Jeb.
Right, this is Richard Mack, the guy who was at the Bundy Ranch.
Pardon?
This is Sheriff Richard Mack, who was, helping Cliven Bundy, and I mean, he's as conservative as they get, and he said he would support Bernie because Bernie's a straight shooter. Back to you, Dan. I'm sorry. Pardon my interruption.
Oh, no problem. Because of that, Mr. Sanders, do you have an actual strategy to reach out to some of these libertarian?
Yep.
And, the Tea Party started because of being mad at bailing out the banks and, before they got co-opted. Do you actually have a strategy?
Yeah, we do.
I think your message...
Dan, I mean, we're working on it. I mean, as I mentioned a moment ago, 3 or 4 weeks I wasn't sure I was going to do this thing. And so we're pedaling as hard as we can here to get our organization together and everything else. Here's the strategy. First of all, the strategy is a 50-state strategy. I think that the former governor of the state of Vermont, my fellow Vermonter, Howard Dean, when he was head of the DNC, said it is crazy not to have a 50-state strategy, and he is absolutely right. The idea that the Democrats are essentially abdicating large parts of the United States of America, the South, and the Great Plains, to the Republicans is pretty crazy to my mind. Because the agenda that I have, which says it's time to stand up to the billionaire class, time to take on Wall Street, time to make sure that education is affordable, time to create jobs, time to make sure that everybody in this country has health care. This is an agenda that appeals to the vast majority of the people in this country, I believe. So we are going to mount, to the degree that we can, a 50-state strategy. I've already spent a lot of time in the South. We've had a really good response, and not just from African Americans, but from a lot of white workers as well. But I think, Dan, what we have got to do, and what we are doing, is we are going to create an agenda that will make sense, I believe, to many of the people in the Tea Party, and especially when the Tea Party folks, working class people, begin to understand who put money to found the Tea Party was the Koch brothers, and we'll take a look at what their agenda is. We'll see how many people in the Tea Party actually agree with that agenda.
We'll be right back with more of your calls for Senator Sanders in our national town hall meeting, Brunch with Bernie, right after this.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And check out sanders.senate.gov, Bernie's website. You can sign up for the Bernie Buzz. It's a great news resource as well. And welcome back. We are live with Senator Sanders here in the third hour of our show. Terry, watching Free Speech TV on Dish Network in Mechanicsburg, Pennsilvania. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Good afternoon, Mr. Sanders and Mr. Hartmann.
Thank you.
I have a question. If you have ever heard the term Demos Kratos, it's Greek, and it's called people power. It's democracy. And I thought maybe you'd want to be able to use that for your run for president, if anybody asks you. And another thing, PBS History, it had a show, The History of Russia. And socialism is becoming such a bad word these days and everything. But on the television show, it said that socialism was presented in 1850 in Russia as a way of protecting the people from the rich and powerful, which sounds like democracy to me. And the way I look at it, crony capitalism and communism in this day and age, they seem to be getting so much closer together. And I'd like to know
what we have, to a certain degree, Terry, is in this country today we have socialism for the very, very rich, and we have a very rugged capitalistic casino-type economy for ordinary people. And I mentioned earlier in the show, I was talking about the TPP, which does so much as a trade agreement to protect Wall Street and the drug companies and the corporate world. And yet when you look at policies designed to protect working people, they are few and far between, especially right now under the Republican leadership. What does it say that as a nation, members of Congress voted to bail out Wall Street after their greed, recklessness, and illegal behavior helped destroy this country? So we bailed out Wall Street, and most of the banks today are now larger than they were before we bailed them out because they were too big to fail when we bailed them out. And yet you got millions of people still suffering the consequences of that Wall Street disaster, whom the government pays very little attention to. So if you're a large bank and you're greedy and you do illegal things, you can be bailed out. Right now, in America, if you're a large multinational corporation, no problem. You can stash your money on the Cayman Islands. You don't have to pay a nickel in federal taxes, no problem. It sounds to me, again, like a government which works overtime for the wealthy and the powerful. I think the entire issue of the campaign that I will be running is to say that I know it's a very radical idea, but maybe the United States government should work for ordinary Americans and not just the billionaires and their lobbyists and the big campaign donors. And that agenda says, yes, if you are very, very wealthy, you're going to have to start paying your fair share of taxes. If you're a large multinational corporation, you're not going to be able to put your money into the Cayman Islands. But on the other hand, if you are a young person who wants to go to college and the family you come from is not very wealthy, you know what? We're going to allow you. We're going to create a situation by which you can go to college and not come out deeply in debt. One of the things, Tom, that we will be announcing, I believe, early next week, is legislation which will make tuition-free for public colleges and universities in America.
Wonderful.
Substantially lower interest rates on student debt.
That's like rolling back one of the pillars of Reaganism.
That's right.
Brilliant. We'll be back with more of your calls for Senator Sanders right after this. Welcome back. 10 minutes before the hour. Thom Hartmann here with you. Senator Sanders on the line with us. Roy, driving through Illinois, listening on Sirius. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hello, Senator Sanders, and hi, Tom. You are just a champion of the people, Thom Hartmann. And, Senator, you are too. Sir, I just wanted to find out, how can I help you become president in Illinois, Peoria, Illinois, sir? When I get home, I can campaign for you. Whatever I need to do, Senator, please let me know how I can help.
Okay, Roy, thank you so much for your support. If you go to BernieSanders.com and sign up, we will get information to you. We have now something, Tom, like 200,000 people who have signed up to be part of the campaign. And as we work through those names state by state, we will have very, very specific ideas and as to what people can do, and we want to hear from people what ideas they have. But just we have to be a little bit patient now because we've got so many names that it's going to take us a little bit of time to get back to everybody. But Roy, we look forward to your support, and thank you very much. But BernieSanders.com. We'll give you the opportunity to sign up, and we'll go from there.
Joyce in Chicago, you're on the air with Senator Sanders. Joyce?
Oh, hi. Hi. Thank you so much, Senator Sanders and Tom. My question is about Fast Track. You know, a long time ago I heard of the book When Corporations Rule the World. It was very scary. And I read in Public Citizen that the Fast Track of the TPP provides, instead of Congress setting trade policy, 500 corporations would advise the executive in trade policy. Is that accurate?
Well, I think, by the way, Public Citizen is a wonderful organization, and we work with them very often, and they're playing a great role on this issue as well as many others. If I'm not mistaken, I think what that refers to is in the shaping of the TransPacific Partnership, there is no question but that corporate America and many large corporations and their representatives have played a very, very active role in shaping the legislation. There have been some unions involved in some parts of it, but by and large, I think it is fair to say that this is a document that represents the wishes of corporate America, of Wall Street, and of the drug companies.
Julie in Green Bay, Wisconsin. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
I cannot wait to vote for you, Senator Sanders, for president.
Thank you very much, Julie.
My question is, how do you plan to sway the group that Tom so lovingly describes as suckers to get them to vote Democrat instead of voting Republican just because they're against the social issues like abortion, et cetera?
Boy, oh boy, Julie, that is exactly the issue that we are going to be working on. And it's not easy, but it is exactly what we are going to be trying to do. Look, you have millions of working people who are unable to send their kids to college. They can't afford health care. They can't afford child care. They have seen their jobs go to China. They're scared to death about what happens to them when they retire because they're not going to have enough money to live in the kind of life that they had hoped that they could live in. And yet they keep voting for folks who want to cut their Social Security, cut their Medicare, make it harder for their kids to go to college, and then send their jobs to China or Vietnam. It is really quite unbelievable. And I think what we will be doing is going to those folks, often white working class people, and saying, look, why are you voting against your own best interest? Fine, you disagree with me on abortion, I am pro-choice. You disagree with me on gay marriage, fine. I believe in gay marriage. I believe in protecting the environment. But even if you don't, why do you vote economically against your own best interest? And what we are going to be doing is building what we call an agenda for America, an agenda that I believe the vast majority of working people in this country will strongly support. And that means creating millions of jobs by rebuilding our infrastructure and transforming our energy system. It means raising the minimum wage and paid sick leave. It means pay equity for women workers. It means ending our disastrous trade policies like NAFTA, CAFTA, and permanent normal trade relations with China. It means for joining the rest of the industrialized world in providing health care to all people. It means learning from countries like Germany and Austria and Denmark, who invest in the education of their young people so that college, or at least tuition in college, is free. I think we're going to pound away at that type of agenda and see if we can wake up some of these folks who, for a variety of reasons, keep voting against their own best interests. And last point I would make is I want to educate some of these folks in the Tea Party about the people who helped fund the creation of the Tea Party, which is the Koch brothers, who believe that we should eliminate Social Security, eliminate Medicare, eliminate Medicaid, eliminate public education in America, give more tax breaks to billionaires. I have the feeling that the more people in the Tea Party learn about those policies, the more I think that they will move toward a progressive agenda.
Yeah, these are the people that I say have been played as suckers.
Yeah, I think that's...
We're trying to find a little less pejorative term.
They have been played to... I mean, why would you be working day and night, or politically, to make the Koch brothers, who are worth $85 billion, even richer while your job goes to China?
Right.
What is that? What sense is that? I don't know. But that's exactly where we're going to be working.
Yeah. We have just 10 seconds, Senator. So.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for their calls today. And it's a busy time in Washington, and we'll be back next week
Indeed.
to talk about what's going on. Tom, thanks so much.
Senator Bernie Sanders, thanks so much for being with us.